The cold winds howled across the empty plains of Zeros, a planet once teeming with life, now nothing more than a barren wasteland. Silhouettes of ruined cities lay in the distance, their forgotten spires reaching for the heavens. In the center of it all, a small group of explorers stood, their faces tense as they gazed out at the vast emptiness. "This isn't what we were told," Kellen murmured, eyes scanning the horizon. "There's no sign of what happened here. It's as if it all vanished overnight." His voice trembled, though he tried to hide it. What kind of catastrophe could erase everything this quickly? Beside him, Elara took a cautious step forward. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." The dust swirled around Elara's boots as she knelt beside a broken piece of technology. "This was one of theirs," she said softly, brushing off the debris. The metallic surface was scorched, as though it had been exposed to extreme heat. Kellen crouched next to her, his brow furrowed. But why would they leave everything behind? There should have been signs of evacuation, not just this. He reached out and gently touched the scorched metal, his fingers tracing the strange symbols etched on its surface. "This looks like something we've never seen before. What happened to their ships, their people?" Elara looked up, her face full of concern. "We need to keep moving. Answers are out there, somewhere." They trudged forward, the eerie silence pressing down on them. No birds, no insects, just the distant roar of the wind. Kellen adjusted the straps of his backpack, his mind racing. There has to be a logical explanation. This isn't the result of an attack. It's like the planet just gave up. Elara didn't respond immediately. She was too lost in thought, her eyes scanning the empty streets as they moved deeper into the forgotten city. "Do you think we're the first to be here since?" Her voice trailed off, unsure. Kellen met her gaze. "I don't know, but if we are, it's the most important discovery of our lives." He paused. It could change everything. The pair came upon what remained of an old observatory, its dome cracked and shattered. Inside they discovered old data logs, barely functioning in the dim light. Kellen knelt beside a terminal, fingers trembling as he tried to power it up. "These records, they're encrypted. If we can get through, we might learn exactly what happened here." Elara's eyes narrowed, her mind working through the possibilities. "We need to be cautious. If whoever did this is still watching." Her words hung in the air like a threat. Kellen looked up. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next." As Kellen worked on decrypting the logs, a low hum filled the room. Elara's head snapped up, eyes scanning the surroundings. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Kellen froze, his fingers hovering over the terminal. The hum grew louder, more intense. Then, as quickly as it had come, it stopped. A moment of silence followed before the screen flickered to life, revealing a map, ancient star chart. This is where they went," Kellen said, a breath of disbelief in his voice. "It's not over. They left. They went somewhere." The explorers moved quickly, the urgency in their steps echoing through the lifeless streets. Elara led the way, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon. "The map points to an anomaly," she said, her voice sharp with determination. Kellen followed closely, his thoughts racing. If it's anything like what we've already seen, this anomaly could be the key to understanding everything. What could cause such a massive disruption? The air seemed to grow colder as they approached the coordinates, an unnatural chill in the atmosphere. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from above, making both of them stop in their tracks. They looked up, only to see the sky darkening further. Something wasn't right. The sound of distant thunder rumbled, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. "This storm wasn't here when we arrived," Kellen muttered, his eyes narrowing at the shifting clouds. Elara's voice was calm but firm. "Something is pulling the storm in. It's not natural." She took a deep breath, feeling the strange pull in the air. "We need to hurry. The coordinates are close." The wind picked up, and the temperature dropped drastically. Elara pushed forward, her pace quickening. But Kellen hesitated, staring into the growing darkness. "Do you think this could be related to what happened to this planet? Some kind of weapon or—" He trailed off, not wanting to voice his fears aloud. "We'll know soon enough," Elara said over her shoulder, her tone unshaken. Finally, they reached the source of the anomaly. It wasn't much to look at, just a circular depression in the ground, but the air around it was thick with energy, and the ground was cracked and scorched. Kellen knelt beside it, his hand hovering over the strange glowing symbols etched into the earth. "This is it," he said, voice barely a whisper. "The source." Elara watched him closely. "What is it? What are these markings?" Kellen stood up slowly, his mind racing. "I don't know, but they're part of something far bigger than we realize." As he turned to face her, the ground suddenly trembled beneath them. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they turned to leave, a low hum began, vibrating through the air, growing louder with each passing second. "It's activating," Elara said, her voice tense with fear. The ground beneath them began to shift, and Kellen stumbled as the earth cracked open wider. He grabbed Elara's arm to steady her. "We have to move." But it was too late. The energy surged, and in an instant, a blinding light erupted from the hole, engulfing everything in its path. They shielded their eyes, feeling the intense heat as the light pulsed, shaking the very foundation of the planet. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light vanished, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The light faded, and the world around them returned to an unsettling calm. Kellen looked at Elara, both of them shaken by the event. "What the hell was that?" Elara asked, her voice shaky. Kellen didn't have an answer. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. "We've never seen anything like it. It's as if the planet itself fought back." He turned his attention back to the strange symbols, which were now faint and fading. "But why? Why would it do that?" Elara's voice was quieter now. "Whatever this was, it's far from over. We've just triggered something, and now, we need to find out what." The explorers stood in the aftermath, trying to process what had just occurred. The energy from the anomaly had dissipated, leaving an eerie stillness. "I don't get it," Kellen muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What is this thing? It's like it's alive, reacting to us." Elara stared at the fading symbols, her mind racing. "We might have triggered something ancient, something that shouldn't be disturbed." She looked at Kellen, determination in her eyes. "We're not leaving until we get answers. This could be the key to understanding what happened here." The ground beneath them groaned again, and they turned to see cracks forming, as if the planet itself was waking up. Kellen took a step forward, his boots crunching on the charred earth. "The way this energy reacted, it's like it's been waiting for something. Waiting for us." Elara glanced over at him, biting her lip. "Maybe it wasn't us it was waiting for. Maybe this was always meant to happen." Her voice was filled with both curiosity and dread. "We need to understand what this means before we trigger something worse." The ground trembled again, and the air grew thick with tension. Elara reached for her scanner, but it suddenly flickered and died, leaving them in a silence that felt too deep. "We need to find shelter," Kellen said, his voice urgent. "If this keeps happening, we'll be trapped out here." The explorers took cover inside a nearby ruin, an ancient structure that had withstood the test of time. The interior was dark, save for the faint glow of bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls. Kellen set his pack down, looking exhausted but still determined. "This place is older than anything we've encountered before," he said, his voice low. "Could this be the remnants of the civilization that once lived here?" Elara nodded, her fingers tracing the moss. "Possibly. But if they knew about the anomaly, why didn't they stop it?" She paused. "Maybe they couldn't." The walls seemed to hum, as if the building itself was reacting to their presence. "We need to figure out who they were," she said, her tone resolute. Kellen stood, brushing off the dust from his suit, as his gaze fixed on a set of carvings along the far wall. This looks like a star map," he said, pointing to a series of symbols. "It's not the same as the one we saw earlier, but it might be related. These people, whoever they were, must have known something." Elara walked over, her eyes scanning the markings. It's hard to decipher, but it looks like they were tracking something moving across the stars. She hesitated, a chill creeping down her spine. Maybe this was their warning, a way to map out whatever this was. The building groaned again, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. "We're not alone," Callan said, his voice urgent. "We need to move." The explorers hurried through the ruin, their footsteps echoing in the silence. "We need to find more clues before whatever this is gets worse," Callan said, his eyes scanning the structure for any signs of danger. As they reached an inner chamber, they found an ancient terminal half buried under debris. "This could be it," Elara said, kneeling beside it. The terminal sparked to life as Callan powered it up, the screen flickering. The data was encrypted, but the faint words that appeared sent a shiver down their spines. "The planet is dying. It will come for you." Before they could process the message, the terminal died again. The walls trembled, as if in response. "We need to go," Callan urged, his voice filled with urgency. "Now." The air grew heavier as Callan and Elara ventured deeper into the ancient ruin, the walls seeming to pulse with a strange energy. "This place feels alive," Elara whispered, her voice uneasy. The floor beneath them vibrated subtly, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone. Callan looked up at the dark ceiling, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings that lined the walls. This was their sanctuary. They must have known what was coming. He stepped forward, his voice firm. "If we're going to understand what happened, we need to find the heart of this place." Elara nodded, her eyes scanning every shadow as if waiting for something to emerge. "Let's move quickly. I don't think we're alone here." As they moved deeper into the heart of the ruin, they reached a vast chamber. At the center stood a massive, glowing structure, like a monument to an ancient civilization. The air hummed with a low frequency that reverberated in their bones. "This is it," Callan said, his voice barely a whisper, awestruck. "Whatever this is, it's what they left behind." Elara approached the structure cautiously, her fingers brushing against the energy field that surrounded it. "Is it a weapon? A machine?" she asked, but Callan shook his head. "It's something far older than that." He turned to her, his face pale. "This isn't just technology, it's a message. A warning." Elara's eyes narrowed as she studied the structure more closely. The symbols. They matched the ones from the surface. "It's almost like a map," she said, tracing the glowing lines with her fingers. "But this one's different. It's like the language is evolving." Callan stepped forward, squinting at the symbols. "If this is a map, it's showing something we haven't seen before. A destination." The energy in the room seemed to intensify, making their skin tingle. "I think we're supposed to follow this," Callan said. "It's telling us where to go next." Elara looked back at him, her expression filled with both fear and excitement. "And if we do, what if it leads to something we can't come back from?" The ground beneath their feet began to tremble again, a deep vibration that seemed to be coming from the very core of the structure. "It's activating," Callan said, his voice tense. "We need to move, now." The symbols on the walls flickered as if responding to the disturbance. Elara grabbed Callan's arm, pulling him toward the exit. "This place is coming alive. Whatever it is, it's about to show us something." The chamber shook violently, sending debris falling from the ceiling. Callan looked back one last time, his mind racing. "We have to understand what it wants from us. We can't leave without answers." The explorers emerged from the ruin, breathless and shaken. The storm had returned, stronger than before, as if the planet was reacting to what they had just uncovered. "We need to figure out what this is," Callan said, his voice firm despite the fear creeping into his chest. "Whatever it is, it's not finished with us." Elara scanned the horizon, her gaze distant. "It's like the planet is fighting back against us, or maybe it's trying to show us something." She shook her head. "I don't know, but we can't stop now. Not when we're this close." Callan nodded, his resolve hardening. "We go to the coordinates. Whatever's waiting for us, we face it head on." Kellen and Alara trekked through the desolate landscape, their bodies weary from the exhausting journey, but their minds sharp with the knowledge that they were nearing the final destination. The map from the ancient structure led them to a hidden canyon, a narrow passage carved into the heart of the planet. "This is it," Alara said, her voice soft but certain. "The coordinates lead here to this canyon." Kellen nodded, his eyes scanning the narrow path ahead. "It's almost too perfect, don't you think? The planet's been leading us here the whole time." The winds howled around them, a constant reminder that the storm was growing stronger. "Whatever's at the end of this path," Kellen said, his voice grim, "it might be our last chance to understand what's really going on." As they descended deeper into the canyon, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, the air thick with an unspoken tension. "Do you feel that?" Alara asked, her voice barely audible. Kellen stopped in his tracks, sensing the same strange energy that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the canyon. "It's like the planet's pulse," he muttered, stepping forward cautiously. "Every step we take, it's like it's reacting to us." Alara scanned the walls, which were covered in strange ancient symbols, some of them similar to those they had seen in the ruin. "This is where it all started," she said. "The civilization. They must have used this place for something important." Kellen's eyes narrowed as he looked ahead, a mixture of fear and awe in his gaze. "Whatever it was, they left it here for us to find." The walls of the canyon began to narrow further, the path becoming more treacherous. Alara glanced over at Kellen, her brow furrowed. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her voice tinged with unease. Kellen nodded, feeling the air grow colder. "I know. It's like we're being pulled towards something." Just then, the ground beneath them shook violently, sending dust and rocks tumbling from the walls. "It's starting," Kellen said, eyes wide. "The energy is intensifying." The canyon seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, as if the planet itself was breathing. "We're too close now," Alara said, her voice resolute. "We have to push forward." Finally, they reached the heart of the canyon, a massive underground chamber filled with an eerie glowing light. At its center stood a colossal structure, unlike anything they had seen before. It was a massive crystalline formation, pulsating with the same energy they had felt earlier. "This is it," Alara breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "This is what the symbols were pointing to." Kellen approached the structure cautiously, his hand reaching out to touch it. "What is it?" he whispered, his voice filled with awe. As his fingers brushed the surface, a violent surge of energy erupted from the crystal, sending them both staggering back. "I think it just answered us," Alara said, her voice trembling. The ground beneath them shook again, and the crystal began to vibrate with increasing intensity. "What's happening?" Alara gasped, her eyes wide with fear. Kellen backed away, watching the crystal closely. "It's reacting to us. It's feeding off our presence." The energy in the chamber spiraled out of control, growing more intense by the second. "We need to get out of here," Kellen said urgently. Alara grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. "We've triggered something we don't understand. We have to leave before..." Before she could finish, the crystal erupted in a blinding light, filling the chamber with searing energy. The walls trembled, and the entire canyon began to collapse. "It's not over," Kellen shouted over the roar. "This is just the beginning." The explosion of light from the crystal sent Kellen and Alara tumbling across the chamber. The world around them spun in a disorienting blur of colors and sounds. When the light finally faded, they were lying in a heap amidst the shattered remnants of the underground chamber. The once vibrant energy of the crystal had dimmed to a faint glow, and the walls around them were crumbling, their foundation unstable. "We have to keep moving," Kellen said, his voice strained as he pulled himself to his feet. Alara groaned, rubbing her head, but nodded. "The whole place is collapsing. We don't have much time." They stumbled toward the exit, the air thick with dust, and the rumble of the canyon's collapse. Every step felt like it might be their last. As they made their way through the collapsing ruins, the ground beneath them began to quake violently. "Hurry!" Kellen shouted, grabbing Alara's arm and pulling her forward. The walls trembled, and rocks rained down around them. They barely avoided a falling boulder as it crashed to the ground just inches away. "This place is falling apart faster than I thought," Elara gasped, her heart racing. "It's not just the structure," Kellen replied, his eyes wide with realization. "It's the whole planet. Something's triggering the collapse. The energy we unleashed, it's destabilizing everything." The canyon groaned, and another massive chunk of rock broke loose, narrowly missing them. "We need to get out of here now," Elara urged, her voice urgent. They finally reached the mouth of the canyon, the light from the storm outside flashing intermittently across the sky. Kellen stopped, his chest heaving as he looked back at the destruction. "It's not over. The planet's still reacting to what we did," he said, voice tight with dread. "Whatever we activated, it's far worse than we realized." Elara glanced over her shoulder, watching as the canyon continued to collapse behind them. "We need to figure out how to stop it," she said, her tone resolute. "We're running out of time." Kellen looked up at the sky, now dark with the storm. "The energy from the crystal, it's spreading, and if we don't stop it soon, the whole planet could be gone." The weight of their discovery pressed down on them both. They had no choice but to act. Kellen and Elara trekked through the storm, the wind howling around them as they made their way toward the coordinates that could hold the key to stopping the planet's destruction. "If there's one place left to find answers, it's there," Kellen said, wiping the rain from his face. "This is it. Whatever they left behind, it might be our only hope." Elara nodded, her face grim. "We don't have any other choice. If we don't stop this, it's over for all of us." As they walked, the ground beneath them began to vibrate again, and Elara's eyes widened. "It's starting to spread faster," she said, pointing to the sky. A faint, sickly green light could be seen in the distance, pulsing with an ominous rhythm. "We need to reach it now." They finally arrived at the location marked on the map, an ancient temple, half buried in the rocky ground. The walls were cracked, and the entrance was covered in vines and debris. "This is it," Elara said, her voice breathless. "The place they wanted us to find." Kellen nodded, his gaze fixed on the door. "Whatever we find inside, it's our last chance." As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with energy. "This is where it all began," Kellen said, his voice reverberating in the silence. Elara stepped forward, reaching for the strange symbols etched into the walls. "Let's hope it's enough to stop this." The air hummed with power, and the ancient temple seemed to come alive, responding to their presence. It was their final chance to save the planet. Inside the ancient temple, the air was thick with an oppressive energy, and the faint green glow from the walls cast long, unnatural shadows. Kellen and Elara stepped cautiously through the chamber, their every footstep echoing in the vast silence. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, some familiar, others foreign. "This is it," Kellen said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "This is where they stored everything. Their knowledge, their warning." Elara nodded, her eyes scanning the walls. "But why keep it hidden? Why not share it with the rest of the universe?" Kellen's expression hardened. Maybe they didn't think anyone would be around to find it, or maybe they never wanted anyone to know. The room seemed to hum with an unseen presence, as if the temple itself was alive, waiting for them to unlock its secrets. Elara moved to a pedestal at the center of the room, her fingers brushing the surface of a glowing stone tablet. "This must be it," she murmured. The symbols on the tablet flickered as her hand made contact, and a low hum resonated through the room. "It's some kind of interface," Kellen said, stepping closer. "I think it's trying to communicate with us." As Elara activated the tablet, a holographic projection flickered to life above it, a star map, much like the one they had seen earlier, but with additional coordinates, lines and connections that spread across the galaxy. "This is it," Elara said, her voice filled with awe and fear. "It's a blueprint, a plan for the future, or a warning for what's to come." Kellen studied the holographic map, his heart racing as he traced the lines that connected various points in space. "These coordinates, they're not just random," he said, his voice low and urgent. "They lead to a massive structure, a central hub of some kind." Elara's eyes widened in realization. It's a network, she said, almost breathless. They built this whole system to connect different planets, to control their resources, to control the flow of energy. Kellen turned to her, his face pale. But why is it collapsing? Why now? Elara looked back at the map, her mind working through the pieces. Maybe they didn't have a choice. Maybe it was designed to fail. A sudden rumble shook the temple, and Elara's eyes widened. Whatever happens next, we need to stop it here. The ground beneath them trembled as the holographic map flickered and distorted. It's destabilizing, Kellen said, his voice strained. We've activated something we weren't meant to. Elara's hands flew over the tablet's interface, trying to steady the projections. We need to find the core of this system. It's the only way to stop the collapse. Kellen nodded, his eyes hardening with resolve. We find it, and we shut it down. The energy in the room intensified, and the walls began to crack, the green light flickering violently. The core, Elara said. It has to be somewhere beneath us. If we don't get there in time, she didn't need to finish her sentence. They both knew the consequences. The planet, and everything on it, would be lost. They reached the heart of the temple, an enormous chamber beneath the surface where a massive glowing core pulsed with energy. The ground around it was cracked, and the air felt electric with power. This is it, Kellen said, his voice barely a whisper. This is the source. Elara stepped forward, her eyes focused on the core. We need to shut it down, but I don't know how. Kellen turned to her, his face grim. We have no choice. We have to try. As they approached, a final surge of energy exploded from the core, knocking them both to the ground. The world seemed to slow as the light from the core enveloped them. Kellen looked up at Elara, his hand reaching for hers. We're not done yet, he said. We'll stop this, together.